Hey, I'm Billy Hallowell, and welcome to Pure Talk, a show brought to you by PureFlix.com. I am excited today to be here with actress Sarah Drew. She'll be talking about her new film, Indivisible. It's a movie about the military. It's a film about marriage. It's the real-life story of an Army chaplain named Darren Turner. Now, before we have that interview with Sarah, we are going to roll the trailer for Indivisible. Check it out.
I'd like for you to have more non-combat experience, but a military-wide shortage of chaplains says otherwise.
Well, I signed up to be where the need is, sir.
I just feel like there's something happening between us.
It's not between you two. It's between you two and that war.
I am excited today to be here with actress Sarah Drew. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. You've had a lot of exciting things go on this year, and there's a new film coming out that you executive produce and co-star in, and the film is called Indivisible. It's about a real-life struggle that this U.S. Army chaplain, Darren Turner, had, and it's this amazing story. It's a military story, a marriage story. What was it that attracted you to this film?
Yeah, I really resonated with the story. I loved that it was a true story, but I really resonated with the marriage aspect. In my life, in my marriage, we went through a pretty dark time. Several years into our marriage, and had to go through counseling and really had to fight our way through the issues that had cropped up. And we came out the other side in just a much more brilliant light. And I remember this one conversation I had with my dad at like my darkest moment, where he was like, just because it feels hopeless doesn't mean that it is hopeless. And I remember taking that into account and going, okay, just because I can't see a way out doesn't mean there isn't a way out. And we went through counseling and really fought and came out the other side. And so anyway, this movie kind of encompassed a very similar story to me, that the whole situation seems totally hopeless. And it isn't, and there's beautiful hope and joy at the end. So I wanted to tell a story that was like that. I wanted to give hope.
That's incredible, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of people struggle in their marriage. Most marriages, there's a bump or two or 10. At one
I think if you're not saying that you're struggling I just don't think you're being honest with yourself.
Exactly. Marriage is hard. It's hard work.
Marriage is hard. It's hard work, and I mean, you're bringing two completely other people together to try to make a life, and we are inherently pretty self-absorbed as human beings, and you have to learn how to put yourself aside, and you have to learn how to compromise. I mean, you have to learn each other's love languages. You have to learn how to communicate. I mean, it's hard work. It's hard work, but it's so sweet when the work is being done, because you learn and you take all of those skills into every other relationship you have, which I think just makes you a better human.
Was there anything in your experience, preparing for the role, and you play Heather, Darren's wife,
right,
in this movie, was there anything marriage-wise that you took away, just lessons maybe from the film personally as you were working on it?
There's this one moment where Heather is sitting on the bed and she's crying, and she offers this prayer about, God, help me to lean on you more than I'm leaning on my husband. Help me to look to you for hope and not rest all of that hope on my husband. And I think that I think we get, especially in a lot of marriages these days, people, it almost becomes like a consumer situation. Like, what can I get out of this marriage? What can this partner, this spouse do for me? And if I'm not getting my needs met, then there must be something wrong with him and I need to go somewhere else. And what I loved about that moment in the film was, like, actually it's about, you can't get your meaning and your identity from your partner. It's too much pressure to put on another person. Like, you don't know what they're going to have to go through. You don't know what you're going to have to lift them up out of the pits from when you make your vows on the day that you marry them. So I really resonated with that, and I loved the message behind that to not put that kind of pressure on another person. We're doing life together, but he's not there to meet all my needs, and I'm not there to meet all his needs. We're there to walk this path together, and we need to be filled up from something other than a faulty human person.
No, and I know there was a quote a few months back where you were talking about this, about how two people make this commitment in front of God, in front of the world, and then they have to live it out, and how this film sort of gives a lens in to how you live that out. And I think what better way than film to sort of show people, because a lot of us, as you were saying, we don't want to maybe admit that we're struggling in a marriage or that there are problems, but to actually watch it seems like a really powerful thing.
I think it is really powerful. I think people are witnessing themselves in these two people. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a military family or not. This is about a breakdown in communication. It's about two people not knowing how to care for one another and not being able to really let the other into what their struggle is. They're both trying to bear an enormous burden on their own, and they're too scared to show their cracks to one another. But what winds up happening when they don't show their cracks to one another is it just resentment builds and it becomes a giant earthquake. If we could just actually own up to our cracks as they happen, apologize for them, and find our way through them, knowing that our partners, our greatest ally in that journey. I think probably more marriages might stick together,
Yeah, it's easy to throw in the towel. It's a lot harder to put in the work, but we make this commitment. And so living that out, I love that this story in Indivisible really tackles that. Now, another element of this, obviously, is it's a military film. It's set in the context of a chaplain, which is also another level. I don't think we see through entertainment very often what chaplains go through.
No, we've never seen it.
Right. So I guess what did you learn about chaplains? What did you sort of discover as you were going through the process of making this?
Yeah, I learned a lot about the chaplain experience. It was a very, very eye-opening experience. So one thing that I discovered, we had a couple chaplains come and visit while we were shooting, and he told Justin Bruning, who plays Darren, that the chaplains aren't allowed to carry guns. And so what happens is that the enemy actually targets them first. They go for the chaplain, and then they go for the comm guy, because the chaplain is the one who's holding the morale together. He's lifting up the community of, he or she are lifting up the community of soldiers. Once you kill their morale, then they all start to fall apart. So they're literally a walking target. And sometimes they, when they're in a particularly dangerous place, somebody will thrust a gun in their hand, be like, you're going to get picked out of the crowd unless you're holding a gun. And that, I mean, that's just a crazy circumstance to be thrust into. Yeah. And then the second person that's targeted is the comms person. So they go for the morale, and then they go for the communications. So there's also this, like, all of these soldiers are going through some of the most horrific things anyone can possibly imagine. They're trained to exist in a completely other way than normal everyday civilians in order to be soldiers, to follow the rules, to follow the chain of command, and to stay alive and to keep their brothers and sisters in arms alive, right? And a chaplain is no different, right? A chaplain is with all of them, but the chaplain also has to hold all of the pain and trauma that these guys are carrying as well. So it's an enormous burden, because they have to keep themselves together. Who they're there to take care of everybody else, but they're experiencing what everybody else is experiencing as well. It's an incredible task, and I don't know how they do it.
I got chills sort of thinking about that, because I haven't really, you don't think about these things, the actual process that people are going through. And as you were describing it, not only being on the front lines, not only seeing things and being there, but then needing to be there for other people and be that spiritual support for others. That's a whole other layer. So I love that you guys chose to do that, to go there in this story, a place, like you were saying, that nobody has really gone before.
Right. And, you know, for Heather, she is on the readiness response team back at home, which means that she's the one that goes in to sit with bereaved children and wives and mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters when a soldier has passed. And so Heather is also doing a chaplain's job, kind of, in a lot of ways, while she's also holding down the fort, taking care of the kids, running the house completely alone, and also sitting in total terror and fear that her husband could be killed at any moment, you know. So she's carrying so much. But then in the story, it's interesting because you get into this almost competition, kind of like she's carrying so much, but she can't tell him how much she's carrying because it pales in comparison to what he's had to go through, but it's still very real for her. And she wants to be held in that, and she wants to be carried in that, and she wants to be validated in the enormity of the job that is, but doesn't feel like she can even ask for that support because of what he's been through. So it really does create this massive breakdown in communication, when really all they want to do is protect one another, love one another, and be there for one another, and they just can't figure out a way to do it.
It sounds like a really fascinating story. And one of the acting questions that I had for you, and I always like to ask actors these questions, is what is it like, obviously, when you play a role like on Grey's Anatomy and it's not a real person, right, that you need to represent? It's, I would imagine, a little bit different than when there is a person who exists, Heather, in this real life story that you guys are telling in film. How do you do that? How do you balance sort of the creative arts with properly representing this real living human being?
Right. I think, you know, because the Turners are not like, you know, iconic people that everybody knows their mannerisms and how they look and how they talk and all that stuff. You have, as an actor, quite a bit of freedom to kind of embody the essence of the story and embody the essence of the character without trying to do like an imitation of who that person is. But you do feel, you know, and there are a lot of elements of the story that were that are fictionalized. You know, they're David Evans, who wrote the script and directed, he took the essence of their story and then added a lot of fictional characters that were sort of combinations of lots of other very real people in order to create the narrative. So we really kind of got to have a lot of creative freedom in creating these people. And the main thrust that we wanted to continue, that we really wanted to depict, was this marriage story, this marriage breakdown. We wanted to show the audience how angry Darren was when he got home, and how resentful Heather was when he showed up and just completely was cut off from the family emotionally. Those were the big things that we needed to make sure that we did justice to, but everything else really was kind of up for grabs.
Well, you know, there's another thing I noticed about the film, obviously, and that's there are a number of people from Grey's Anatomy, your former classmates who are in this, including Jason, who you mentioned. So how did that come about? How did it happen that you sort of had some of these people you've worked with come onto this film?
Well, it was really fun. I mean, when I came on as an executive producer, I did a bunch of script notes, and I was like, look, I want to be involved in every aspect of this. I want to make sure that whoever's playing my husband is amazing, and I want to find the right people to play all of these incredibly complicated characters who have to go through some really big things. And what was great is it was an extremely collaborative process, and they were like, are you kidding? Go for it. So I recommended all those guys for this. We got, you know, Justin Bruning to play my husband, and we already had, you know, we're great friends and already knew we had chemistry, and so great to get him on board. And then Jason, I mean, I remember when I called him to make him the offer, I was just on the phone in the car outside the post office. I'm like, hey, you want to come play? And he's like, send me the script. And then he loved it, and that was exciting. And then Michael O'Neill, I'm so glad we got Michael O'Neill. I'm such a big, he played the shooter in this giant two episode finale for Grey's on my first season, and we bonded while we were working on that together. And I wanted Chaplain Rogers I needed Chaplain Rogers to be really a solid actor. And I was thrilled that he said yes. He's just amazing in it. And then Sky P. Marshall, I did a guest spot. She did a guest spot on an episode the season before on Grey's. And I remember hanging out with her and her telling me that she'd been in the Air Force. So I was like, get this woman in for this role.
Side note, not to totally interrupt you, but we have Sky. We actually had her in studio in Burbank, and she'll be on the show next week. So she's phenomenal. Really, really fascinating story.
She's amazing. She's amazing in the film. Like I could not have imagined someone better in that role. And that, yeah, I mean, it was really, really fun to get to just bring a whole bunch of my buds on, because then you already have chemistry, camaraderie. You have people that are excited to participate. People doing it for less than their quote because they just want to work with their friends, and we had a small budget for this. So we really got some incredible talent, especially for the budget that we had. It was pretty great.
Well, that's great. It's a great slate of actors. They're all incredible, and people can check out, again, Sky next week on our show. I have to ask you about Grey's Anatomy, obviously. You played Dr. April Kepner for 9 years, am I correct?
9, yes.
So 9 years. My wife, by the way, is a huge Grey's Anatomy fan, so she did not miss an episode and was very sad to see your character go. But what is it like for you being on a show that long to exit? What does that process feel like?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many emotions. I feel like I've been through like every different emotion you can possibly imagine. It was really hard and sad at first. But then incredibly beautiful. I had a very lovely farewell with all of my cast and my crew and the fans, and I felt sent off in a very lovely way when all was said and done. Definitely hurt in the moment for sure, but now I'm so excited to be moving on. I just finished a movie that I shot in Vancouver. I just got home actually last night from that, and my web series got nominated that I directed. My first time directing for Grey's Anatomy got nominated for an Emmy. So I got to go and do all this Emmy stuff the last few weeks, and now I'm just reading scripts and figuring out what I want to do next. And it's a very exciting and delightful and joyful, jubilant time. It really is. I'm
it's a new beginning. It's a new beginning for you
Yeah.
to film your things. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And congratulations on the Emmy nomination too. That was
Thank
incredible.
you. Thank you so much.
So my last question for you, and obviously everybody watching, make sure you go out and see Indivisible when it comes out October 26th, right?
Yep.
Last question. What is the biggest lesson? And this is sort of a random question, but again, it's one of those things I love to ask people who have been in Hollywood for a while. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the industry in general?
I think my biggest lesson is I walked into Hollywood having had a pretty sheltered life, and I thought that I was going to walk out into Hollywood, and I thought I knew that everything was very black and white in my brain. That's how I was when I walked into Hollywood. I thought I had a lot to teach people, because that's what you do when you're 18 and you don't know anything. And I think the greatest lesson for me has been that there are lessons everywhere. Everybody has something to teach me. I am learning all the time. I'm growing in empathy all the time. I'm seeing the world from new perspectives all the time. And it has increased my love for people and has increased my love for God and my understanding. It's expanded my understanding of God in the most incredible way. And I think the greatest lesson I've learned in Hollywood is just it has been a lesson in humility. It's been a lesson in not having all the answers and being okay with the unknown. Sometimes people say that Hollywood is a dark place, and I don't find it to be dark. I find it to be bursting with light and bursting with color. And it's taught me, the people that I've worked with have taught me incredible lessons that I'll take with me forever.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing about the film, about your career, and that last part is so powerful about the lessons you've learned. I appreciate you giving those details. And everyone else, make sure you tune in next week for another episode of Pure Talk. You can go to our PureFlix page on Facebook at facebook.com/PureFlix.
Here's the deal. PureFlix.com has 6,500 titles you can watch right now. That's way too many to show you in just 90 seconds, but you know what? Here we go.
I am the man, you are the dog. I am talking to a dog.
How many times do you know the directions to your house, but you listening to the phone?